Welcome back. Hope you've had a great year so far. We have, because the truck moved under its own power to put the bed on. Now that we've got it snugged down with the all new hardware, it's time to start actually wiring our truck. And I wanted to go over a few things that I feel are essential before you tackle a project like this. We're going to be using this Speedway Motors wiring kit, which we did a complete video, and I'll put a link right here on the screen. I think that only works for PC users. I'm not sure you mobile guys will be able to see it. Good wire management is extremely important to how the project's going to turn out looking and how it'll function. There's two types of loom to use whenever you're running your wiring. This is split sleeving and this is called braided sleeve. Now both of these are from Alex Tech and they're both from Amazon. So if you just type that into Amazon, you'll find what you're looking for. Also, both of these are for 3/4 inch wiring. So I find that to be a perfect universal size. Number one, especially in this braided sleeve, even if you just have a few wires and it could be done with 1/4 inch, this could still work if you pull it tight, kind of like a Chinese finger cuff situation. And then it can go up to, I would say, easily 1 inch worth of wiring when you compress it. I like this for long runs, or if you're ever gonna have to pull this through anything, it's perfect for that scenario. You can also still push wire in it if you need to, but I really recommend the split sleeve if you know for sure that you're gonna have wires coming in and out regularly, because you can just feed them out and then tape it on both sides. Speaking of taping it, if you've watched any of my videos doing any wiring, you know how much I love hockey tape, and I bet the Canadians are sick and tired of me pronouncing it like that. But these two rolls are about 10 bucks on Amazon. It almost identically matches factory wiring harnesses in our late model vehicles and how they mate different groups of wires together. Now these are the two types of testers that I have. This is just a simple test light where you clamp this on the ground side and you can use this point to either probe through the insulation of a wire or touch the exposed wire. And it'll let you know if there's voltage there by lighting up. That's why it's called a test light. You'll need a voltmeter, especially if you're doing anything with fuel injection, and sometimes you'll have like a 5-volt output instead of 12. You can pay whatever you want for one of these. Quite honestly, I think this was $25 on Amazon, and it's a Crenova MS8233D. So you can pay up to $250 for like a Fluke brand, but if you're not making your living with it, probably unnecessary. The last item that I like to have is something that I'd say sets my work apart from most people. I want to say this is about 13 bucks from Amazon. You attach your wires to these pins and build these connections as you need to, and they're somewhat weatherproof and a quick disconnect. I noticed the buyer of the square body that we built had the front end taken off whenever they painted it. And it made me think, how nice would it be for the owner to have just had a quick disconnect for all the headlights and turn signals and horns, so when they did take the front end off, it would have been much more serviceable. For this project, I'm really liking the idea of putting the fuse box up here nice and tight. It's up high behind the dash and hidden from view, and from any place that you're going to rest or use your feet, easily serviceable to reach your fuses to. Now in the past, what we've done for passing the wires through the firewall is to make like a plate, and we used a grommet, and then we covered the wire in that type of that braided loom, which it looked fantastic coming out of there and very much on purpose. But on this build, I think we'll just hide the wiring altogether as it comes out of the cab. That looks really good, and that'll keep our wires from taking damage when we're feeding that stuff through. This organized mess is after I've cut apart the harness and rerouted the wires that we're going to need to go outside of the cab and eliminated a few that don't need to. I made note on the instructions of the wires that I pulled from that engine compartment feeds, just so I won't be looking for those in the future. And also, I left some of these that we technically don't need, but it's never a bad idea to have a couple of extra wires going through that harness in case you come up with something later that maybe you forgot that you want to run, and you can always refer back to that and tap into it to send power to those features. Now that's the really clean install that we're looking for. It may never be seen by others, but I know it's there, and you know it's there. Now that these are all pulled through, I've separated the rear wiring from the front. I want to point out, I did have to extend the fuel level sending wire, which I thought it was extremely short. After wrapping the wires for the rear lights in the split loom, I ran them inside this driver's side frame rail. It goes all the way out to the back. And I have to say, they certainly didn't leave us any extra wire. That is the factory termination for the left rear turn signal. So I'm guessing they assume you're going to have it on the left side, so you don't need that much extra wire, but still, for a short bed pickup truck, I really would have liked to have seen a little more length on those. We tied in for the front wires and ran them inside this frame rail as well, and I've just wrapped them around this front cross member because radiator support's going to sit in these bolt holes, so this should still remain exposed, so we can unwrap it and start tying it to the back side of our headlights and turn signals and horns. And again, we'll probably put those disconnects in line just to make it a little more serviceable. I've gone ahead and removed the driver's seat, which gives us a lot more room in here to work. Also, this 1/4 inch neoprene insulation I ordered off of Amazon, it's sticky on one side. This should help us tremendously with sound deadening. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this cut and stuck in place, and then we can mount the fuse panel. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm gonna put a link on the screen to this product. Do not buy it. That backing tears as soon as you try to pull it. The glue's great, but If you can't get the paper off in one piece, what difference does it make? All right, we took that crap back to the Amazon pickup point or drop off or whatever, and went by Napa and bought 3 sheets of this 500 by 500 millimeter sound deadening mat. It's not really exactly what I wanted because I don't like this glossy finish and I don't feel like there's a lot of absorption on the surface. These just basically take that tinny noise out of sheet metal. But it's going to allow us to keep moving forward on our project, and that's what we need. Maybe I can not make contact with everything and put it just above where the carpet should lay. One of the first things I want to wire up is our dimmer switch, otherwise we can't test our headlight outputs. So this basically just chooses high or low beam. It also sends the signal to the high beam indicator on your dash. So it's going to have constant power in and then high beam and low beam outputs. I don't care for the fact that it won't work this direction in this factory indention. And if I turn it around and mount it this way, and then put the connector they sent with us on this thing, it's just a big mess in my feet. Lucky for us, we kept our nearly 60-year-old headlight switch. So I'll get these wires spliced in, and I like the way this one mounts better anyway. Now, we can mount that switch back where it came from. I really like the way these wires will lay. It'll be under the carpet and it won't interfere or leave a lump under there where we're going to want to rest our foot on a solid surface. I did test the switch, by the way, with our voltmeter with continuity coming from the power and then output to the high beam indicator and then also the low beam. I've sorted some of these wires out of our way, so maybe it'll simplify the next steps for you guys. Again, this stuff up here is like accessories and radio. Just stuff that we don't need to concern ourselves with right away. And then I've laid this coil of wire up here. That's for running the dash, which is like turn signal indicators and high beam indicator. Tachometer wires ran into there. Basically, fuel sender unit, all that stuff is wound up in here. This is the horn relay, which comes with the Speedway wiring harness. That stuff's pretty much just plug and play. You just snap those wires in place. These wires hanging down are our brake switch. 2 wires that run that. It doesn't matter which side of a switch that you plug them into, as long as they make contact when the brake is applied. And then here's the 3rd brake light wire, which I think we sent that to the back of the bed, and we're going to use it to do maybe backup lights. This harness doesn't come with that. So we'll have to unwire 2 of these and drill a spot for the switch that's built into this wilwood. If we pull this little dust cover off, we'll see these 2 male spades. So we'll just find a spot to kind of drill through, make it nice and hidden, and tie it along here, and then run these wires and put female spades on them. This group of wires has the connector built on, and that's for our headlight switch. So that's pretty much a plug and play situation as well. Not much really to show you guys there. I've already connected this steering column, so there's a ground that comes with that also that we'll have to ground. This connection is going to be an output for our alternator once we install one, and that tells it when to start charging. Then we have our battery feed that basically is what passes through the fuse box from the supply line we put in up here. And we'll need to run that to our ignition switch. We'll also run an accessory output, essentially, from the ignition switch onto this brown wire or green. I'm colorblind as a bat. And then we'll have like a switched lead for ignition run. Essentially, those are separated so you have voltage for some of your accessories no matter what's going on the ignition switch, like while it's cranking. And then most of your power outputs from your fuse box are only gonna be hot when the ignition is in the on or accessory position, but not while it's cranking, because you need all of your amps to run the starter. There's only a couple things that need to have 12 volt output while the ignition is in the crank position, and that would be your power output for your distributor, or in our case, the Holley, and things like the clock battery or your radio constant power output, so you don't have to reset your clock every time you crank the engine. Headlights tend to stay on too. So I tied the wires into the ignition switch, plugged in the headlight switch, and we're going to be testing, let's see, park lights and turn signals. Putting 10 amp fuses in because we're not going to have much of a draw. Brake and courtesy, and we'll put these flashers in for both the hazards and the turn signal. All right, let's see what pops. Let's turn on our key. Fuel pump primes. Holley is turning on. Let's pull our headlight switch to on. I think the flashers won't work if there's no bulb connected. High beams show to be on. Now if we can check the running lights, aka park lamps, they are on as well. Now I'm gonna go hit the high beam switch, and when I do, this should light up. Yeah. This is one of those really good scenarios for using a test light instead of a voltmeter. It kind of gives you an instant notification that what you've hooked up works. Our tail lights, the only thing we should have power to are the running lamps. And we do. We use a wire nut to tie these two brake switch wires together. That should simulate our brakes being pressed, and then we don't really have to worry about anything else for now. What should happen is both the left turn and the right turn should be constant hot, because basically your brake light wires for the rear are your turn signal wires. So yeah, there's the left turn. Now here's the right rear turn. And that's hot as well. Last thing I want to test before we start doing a bunch of tie-ins. That works. We'll need to cut it here and pick up again next week when we finish up a lot of this tie-in stuff. But this is the major first steps that it takes, and we've confirmed that we have power where we need it. So I appreciate you guys watching. Tune in next week. We ended that just in time too, because I'm about to die for some of this chicken.